boy, we really like that one. We haven't seen that one for a while again, and that's just excellent. We loved it. It's once again it's weird. Much like Rebecca, we've got this all this anticipation with Alfred Hitchcock coming to America to work in Hollywood, and he's gone and made another British movie. Again, a British director, completely British cast, set in Britain, based on a book written by someone from Britain, set in Britain. So it is very interesting. There's just nothing Hollywood about this movie yet. Let's talk about Hollywood and the influence of the Hays Code, the censors, because the ending is really just huge in this one. In the book, he's poisoned her. I mean, he really did. And with RKO, there was no way in the world that they were going to let Cary Grant be thought of as a bad guy. In fact, the ending was tested with audiences, the way that we'll talk about in a second, where he does turn out to be the murderer. And audiences themselves really just didn't accept that Cary Grant would do that, because they just didn't see him in that way. It didn't work to them, and they're probably right. Who knows? But probably Alfred Hitchcock was making this film the whole way for him to be the murderer. So let's talk briefly about the ending that probably was to be filmed. He's bringing her up this glass of poisoned milk. She knows he's going to poison her, so she writes a letter that says to her mother, I believe, I'm about to be poisoned. Oh, in the book she had learned she was pregnant as well with his child, and in the book he was an adulterer. He was this murderer, this thief. I mean, he was just a real bad man. So not only could she not live without him, and she just felt like dying, but she didn't really want him to reproduce himself, so she was quite happy to take the poison. But she writes this letter, and before she takes the milk, she says, "Won't you mail this for me, dear?" And he does. She drinks the milk. He goes off, and you see him mailing the letter, and that's the end of the movie. So you know that he's going to get in trouble. He's not going to get away with it. But there was just no way. So they really struggled with the ending. They really fought and argued and came up with this ending where, he was trying to kill himself because he wanted to get out of debt and he loved her and all that stuff. And I'm not sure that doesn't work to me. I mean, it's kind of dumb if you have this woman who knows that she's with a bad guy, is going to let herself be killed. I don't know. That's a little far-fetched. And isn't it more fun that this whole time it's that she's been suspecting him, and it looks like he's a murderer, it looks like he's doing all those bad things, but in the end he's not. He was just a spendthrift. What's that? Yeah, he was in Liverpool. I mean, they explained everything away. I mean, he did steal the money from Leo G. Carroll, but I don't know. That's more psychological, where she was suspicious of him, had every right to be, but in the end, he really wasn't a murderer. It works for me. But you can see when you watch the movie, knowing that Hitchcock was going to make him the bad guy, you can see that Cary Grant, there's lots of... In fact, RKO, when they first saw the final cut, they instructed Alfred Hitchcock to take out every little bit of Cary Grant looking sinister. And he said, okay, and they were left with 55 minutes. Think about that. So you just, there was no way. And it reminds us of The Lodger. Remember The Lodger? When Ivor Novello, that Alfred Hitchcock wanted to make that ambiguous, that he just goes off into the night and we never really know, was he the Avenger killing all these women? And the studio in that case was like, no way, Ivor Novello's our matinee idol, forget it. In fact, I think he said you had to spell it out for the audience that Ivor Novello wasn't a bad guy. And we see this again in the movie coming up, I forget what year it is, but in Suspicion with Cary Grant. And I think Cary Grant probably thought it would have been cool. As I said, he's been in 40 movies already. He's been in The Philadelphia Story, he's been in, lots of Gunga Din. He was in Gunga Din in 1939 with Joan Fontaine. I mean, he's already a star. He's done the slapstick thing, but yeah, there was just no way. And in the end, we get this ending. I don't know. Let us know what you think of the ending. And the other thing I want to mention is you've got the DVD. Hopefully, if you haven't already, do watch the 20-minute documentary on this film. You'll learn lots, and they talk about that at length. They also talk about how the glass of milk came up, looks so bright, and you got to see that. And weren't the shadows amazing? I mean, every time Joan Fontaine was in trouble, there was a spider web of shadows behind her. The music was amazing. That first waltz that they were dancing to was happy, and every time everything was fine, there was the happy waltz, and every time there was things that weren't fine, it was the same waltz but in a minor key. Very, very good. Love the music. I didn't really notice the music as much in this one as Rebecca, but I noted a lot. In fact, there was one scene when she was driving to go see if Beaky had been murdered, and the music is driving the scene where she's scared to death, and we're thinking, oh yeah, Beaky's going to be floating in the English Channel, and I muted it, and it's just amazing. Without that music, it really doesn't have the same ambiance. So, anyways, so the cameo was hard to spot. Here it is, where he's mailing the post, and again, drawing attention to that post box. They pointed out in 2 times at least in this movie that there was that mailbox in this town. And if you were counting, Cary Grant called Joan Fontaine monkey face 19 times, and it was fantastic. I can't think of another person who would have pulled this role off as well as Cary Grant. He's perfect. He's funny. He's serious. He's a scoundrel. He's a rogue. He's charming. He can charm. What was one thing I read he could charm? Birds out of a tree. I really believe he could have, and I can't wait to see him again. He's going to be in Notorious with Ingrid Bergman. How lucky are we? Boy, we can't wait. So now this movie apparently is set to be remade in 2011 or 2012, depending on when you're watching this, with Will Smith. And that's exciting because Will Smith does good stuff. He does great serious movies and he does comedy. Hey, perfect. I mean, if anyone can do both, it's Will Smith. So we'll definitely look for that. We saw a discussion of murder at the dinner table, and we've seen that again. I mean, certainly in Blackmail with Annie Andra, and they're talking about murdering with a knife. It's just not British to murder with a knife. I mean, why would you take a knife? And that's not the only time you'll see that. So very, very cool. Very Hitchcockian. Very good. Loved it. Can't wait to hear the comments to see. And you know, the other thing too is that if you've got that DVD, check out the trailer where Joan Fontaine is narrating at you about what's going on. And the trailer has not been restored, and it really brings it home at how lucky we are that they've restored these DVDs, because the trailer is terrible, and that's what we'd be watching had they not invested all these millions of dollars. If you do watch the making of, you'll see a little bit of the colorized version of which audiences needed to see in the 70s, and they proved that it was more watched in color, but it's just awful. That is not how Alfred Hitchcock wanted it to be. How about those champagne glasses? We're loving those. We've got to get a set of those champagne glasses. We love them. Yes. So not only was milk as a murder weapon, which was brilliant, but brandy. How about that, Beaky? And in the book, if I'm not mistaken, he actually does encourage Beaky to drink a whole vat of brandy, which does kill him. I don't think they set it up that way that he was allergic, but he just was egging him on in France, in Paris, and he does actually die from that. So not exactly murder, but not a nice guy. So okay, so that's good stuff. I think. Just real quick, the fact that if you do watch this one again, there is that moment when he's proposing to Joan Fontaine's character, Cary Grant is anyways, and he's talking to the portrait of his father, and he's telling the father everything. This is not going to work out good for her. I'm no good for her. It really is a confession and a preview of things to come, sort of. And they also get married in the rain, and that's never a good sign. Have we ever been married in the rain? No, I don't think so. So, yeah. Okay, so 1941. We're now done with 1941. We did both Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Suspicion from 1941. Some great movies from 1941. Truly, this is got to be one of our favorite years. Citizen Kane was made for 1941. Arguably the greatest film ever made. If you haven't seen it recently, watch it. And watch the documentary of afterwards. Fantastic stuff. The Maltese Falcon, we just watched that a few days ago for the millionth time. It is so good. Humphrey Bogart is awesome in that movie. He's really, really good. And what won Best Picture was not any of these movies, but something called How Green Was My Valley. I know what you're thinking. You've never heard of it. We did watch that one. We'd never seen. Well, we'd tried to watch it before just because we'd always known about it. And when we sat down and actually watched it, it's pretty good, right? Okay, it's not that good, but it's dated and whatever. But you got to see it if you're going to want to see all the movies that won Best Picture over the years. You got to see it. And put it this way: There are worse movies that have won Best Picture even before that and after that, mostly before that. So it's not bad, and you get to see Maureen O'Hara again. So not bad. So, but we can recommend a movie called Sullivan's Travels, which has Joel McCrea, our hero in Foreign Correspondent. Boy, with a really weak beginning. It's excellent. It's a really good movie. That was fun. Wow, we just loved the movies in 1941. Weirdly, How Green Was My Valley won. But Joan Fontaine won Best Actress, and she should have. Should she have won Best Actress for Rebecca? Was she more convincing and more awesome in Rebecca? Probably. I don't know. They're both really good performances. But audiences wanted to give instead of Rebecca, for Joan Fontaine's Rebecca, they wanted to give it to Ginger Rogers, or not audiences, but the Academy, to Ginger Rogers for her role in Kitty Foyle. Weird. Dumbo was also released in 1941, Walt Disney's Dumbo, and you remember crying when you watched that one, so very good. Okay, so we're done with 1941. We're having so much fun doing this. We love these Cary Grant movies. That was awesome. We're back next week with a movie called Saboteur from 1942. It's got to be good. It's called Saboteur. So we look forward to that. And until then, from our couch to yours, we'll see you next week.